Hi there. This video is in response to a question from someone who watched one of my earlier videos, and the question's really about, or it was really more about exploring when we meet someone, when we transition and we meet someone who did something in this life experience that we would label wrong, bad, inappropriate. Something such as, I mentioned in one of my videos, being molested by my grandfather when I was a little girl. So, to elaborate further on that, I can only share my own experience. It's all I will ever do. Certainly there will be people who will have their own beliefs on this, and that's fine. I'm not here to be right. That's one thing I will always say. And just take what sits with you, and what doesn't, throw it away. When I had my transition experience and was greeted by the grandfather who molested me when I was 3 years old, certainly I was not open to that meeting. In fact, there was an opportunity to say no to that experience, which is what I chose. It did take some time after my my NDE to come back and really grasp this new vehicle and all these new abilities, and wrap my head around what I was supposed to do with all this. And part of that was also wrapping my head, my heart, and my new skin around how to interact with these transitioned people in my life who had hurt me, or in my experience I believed had hurt me. For myself, my grandfather was a very sick man. He was bipolar. We didn't know it at the time. It wasn't diagnosed, and he was not medicated and very, very sick. And my parents were away on a trip to Spain, and we were with my other set of grandparents at the time. In staying with this set of grandparents, my very sick grandfather came to the house and invited both my sister and I to go on a retreat with him, which was a Bible camp retreat. And I can remember, even just being 3 years old, hiding behind my grandmother's leg and just knowing intuitively that this man was not good for me. And my sister, who would have been about 5 at the time, did pretty much the same thing, and in fact said, "I won't go." Even at the age of 3, something within me felt compassion for this man, and in that put myself behind that compassion and said I would go. I saw the hurt in his eyes, and even at 44 years old, I can remember this whole experience in the foyer of my grandparents' house like it was yesterday. I did go on the retreat, and some pretty devastating things happened at that time. Yet now I don't see them as devastating. For 38 years, that's how I described them. Very painful, very sad, very lonely, very hurt, very wounded, very angry. After my NDE, working with my birth guide, Bernadette, who very slowly introduced the concept to me that all souls who had hurt us in this experience were part of that chart that I looked at, part of that map that I mentioned, that I helped to draft for my soul, from my soul perspective, and with the souls that I chose to incarnate with, and that my grandfather in fact was one of those. And that the souls that we choose to create these experiences for us and with us co-creations, if you will, of experience, in fact, have an agreement to do so. Now, I know that this is somewhat of a topic that could be considered very, very scandalous from a spiritual community's perspective. There's a lot of people who have opinions about this. So again, I can only share from my own experience that I was shown and told there's nothing here that isn't perfect. That every soul that incarnates maps this out in advance. That every experience that the soul encounters is one that they have chosen, even those we label devastating. After working with my guide Bernadette for quite some time on this, I finally was open to allowing my grandfather close to me energetically. Slowly I would allow him to come. His appearance was nothing like that in his earthly form. It was gentler, kinder. It was not sick. There was no mental illness. There was no fear. And in fact, I could immediately recognize that there was nothing about him that was the same. As I slowly began to spend time with him, what I recognized was I would never give such an arduous agreement to anyone had I not trusted them implicitly at the soul level. I would not have asked for them to carry out such an agreement if it was not in fact intended for them to be the one to follow through on that. And just like here, who would you entrust your biggest, most arduous life things with but someone you so trust? When I finally wrapped my head around that, knowing that Bernadette has never steered me wrong, I was able to spend time with him, and I realized he was my biggest advocate here during this incarnation. Now I can call on him and ask for his support and guidance. He's actually one of the energies that I call on when I'm going through tough times now. How crazy does that sound? We want to believe that the devastation that's going on around us is outside of ourselves. We want to believe that the wounded are, in fact, someone we should feel sorry for, and that people who have had quote-unquote horrific acts done to them should be pitied, and that they should not have had these things happen. And yet, speaking as a survivor of molestation, to me it's one of my biggest gifts now. Certainly I do not wish this on any child. Certainly I do not wish for a child to go through that. Yet I know that if it is in fact happening, that it is an experience that's been requested. In my video I did say that I would elaborate further on why we choose to incarnate, and I was hoping to get to that in this video, but I'm already at 9 minutes, so maybe I'll start into it and see how far I get before YouTube cuts me off. We're infinite beings of wisdom. There's nothing that we need to learn here, and I hear often psychics call Earth a classroom. I don't see it that way. We are all of this. We're not limited in any way, and I like to often draw it on a whiteboard because it's much easier to see. So maybe I'll do that in a separate segment. But we incarnate for experience. That's the only reason we incarnate. We're not here to learn anything. We're not here to become an older soul. We're not here to clear karma. We're not here to fix things, to remedy things. We're not here for any of those reasons. And again, this may be very scandalous to say in the spiritual community, especially for people who are so tied to the belief of karma. If you believe in duality and you create that belief in your experience, then yes, that's what you have. We're in the third dimension. It is true that there is light to have darkness. It is true that there is good to have bad. That does not mean that from the soul perspective that is our truth. So I think I'll wrap this one up now and do a separate segment on the purpose of incarnation. But I hope that this addresses the question a little bit more about working with transition souls who have hurt us in this lifetime, and the relationship there, and what it can be versus what it was. I hope that's helpful to you. Feel free to email me if it is not. Thank you.